12305 5th Helena Drive, Brentwood, a modest stucco house in a hidden neighborhood, is the setting for the tragic demise of the world's most famous sex symbol, a luminous star who, 40 years after her death, is still an icon.
With Marilyn Monroe as Lorelei Lee.
I do think that Marilyn Monroe is the real sex star of the 20th century, and I think it is because of her combination of sexuality and vulnerability.
Marilyn Monroe was a legend.
Thank you, Mr. Samus. It's a great thrill, and I'm very appreciative to everyone who's made this possible.
But she began life as Norma Jean Baker, born in the charity ward of Los Angeles County General Hospital to an unmarried mother in 1926. She spent her childhood being passed between foster homes, orphanages, and the homes of any family acquaintance who would take her in. Marilyn knew Hollywood well. She was one of its hometown girls. From early childhood, she'd heard about the fabulously rich movie stars and their mansions in Beverly Hills. And she'd heard that alongside all the factories and plants where most people worked, Hollywood had a dream factory where poor little girls could grow up to become rich and famous. By 16, Norma Jean was married, her way of escaping the endless series of foster homes she'd had to endure. But it wasn't until she was talked into posing for cheesecake photos that she realized there was another way out.
I always say a kiss on the hand feels very good, but a diamond tiara lasts forever.
Norma Jean was immediately popular as a model, and her sexy calendar photos were much in demand. But her very first magazine cover featured her in a wholesome girl-next-door pose for the family circle.
A symbol of all the girls back home, Marilyn's talent did not go unrecognized.
For more than 60 years, James Bacon has been a respected news reporter in Hollywood. In the late 1940s, he was one of the first Hollywood reporters to take notice of the young model drawing so much attention.
The camera falls in love with certain people it does not. In Marilyn's case, it really fell in love with her, you know, and that's why she became so famous around the world.
Bacon had met her before she'd become a superstar and claimed their relationship had gone beyond the strictly professional after an innocent interview one night.
I drove her over to the guest house. She invited me in, and she had Dom Perignon on ice. We drank 2 or 3 bottles of champagne. One thing led to another, you know, and that was it. I spent the night. Yeah. In fact, it cost me my first wife. She had a wonderful knack of just making the man she was talking to feel very important. And no other star ever had it. And I interviewed thousands of them.
The screen's most exciting woman, Marilyn Monroe.
In 1953, Marilyn was a big star with more exposure than any actress could ask for.
I just love finding new places to wear diamonds.
At the same time, a struggling young writer in Chicago had his eye on the Hollywood scene for the spark he needed to launch a new kind of magazine.
I began planning Playboy in the spring and summer of 1953, and I needed a gimmick. I had no real money, so I needed something to get a lot of publicity.
In 1953, the voluptuous big-screen bombshell set off a storm in the publishing world when nude pictures of her appeared in the very first issue of Playboy magazine.
It caused a sensation. And as Marilyn said at the time, that all I had on was the radio. And I think that attitude in the conservative 1950s was the beginning of what Playboy attempted to support throughout that decade and thereafter.
Hefner paid only $500 for the Monroe nudes. Now, a single issue of that first edition of Playboy sells for almost $1,000. Needless to say, Marilyn earned only $50 in 1949 for the nude photo session. Few people had seen the pictures because of the obscenity laws at the time, but Hefner had nothing to lose. Monroe also left her mark on Hollywood.
Marilyn Monroe, soaring to new heights as the screen's most lovable laugh-getter.
Everything's fine. A married man, air conditioning, champagne and potato chips. It's just a wonderful party.
It's still not hard to find her presence in her hometown, where she rose from shy little orphan girl to the larger-than-life screen goddess.
She always went one step further. She would appear with a neckline all the way to her belly button. She would wear dresses that were see-through that nobody wore in those days.
Hairdresser Mickey Song was backstage for the televised celebration for President John F. Kennedy's 45th birthday. Marilyn, who was flying in from the West Coast, was more than an hour late.
I was in a dressing room when she was brought down by Bobby Kennedy.
It was Song's job to make sure Marilyn's hair looked its best for what's remembered as one of her most spectacular performances, her unique rendition of the traditional birthday song.
And actually, at one point, I almost thought that I had her looking like Jacqueline Kennedy. And I thought, I'm not sure if this was good or not, but I went with what I did, and I thought it turned out pretty good. She was amazing. I mean, she looked almost like this dress was like almost like see-through. She looked to me, I've said once before, like a mermaid coming out of the water. It was one of her most photographed moments.
Not since the 7-year itch, so much Marilyn.
Penny McGuigan, who appeared on screen with Monroe in the 1959 hit Some Like It Hot, remembers the first time she saw Marilyn in person.
We were on the set, and Marilyn came walking by, and she had her hair up in curlers and just slacks and a regular old blouse, and everybody went, ah. She was charismatic and beautiful even with her hair up in curlers.
But everyone on the set knew about Marilyn's reputation for being a very difficult actress to work with, especially for whoever was directing her.
I remember Billy Wilder having kind of a rough day with her one day, and I said, Billy, you're such a big director. Why? Do you like working with Marilyn? He said, because she's magic on that screen. And she was. There was a vulnerability, there was a wistfulness, there was an honesty, there was a little girl quality, and for some reason, other people may have those qualities, but they don't bring it to the camera. She did.
We forgot about the stairs. Isn't that silly? It was very easy. I just pulled out the nails. Oh. It's perfectly safe. Nobody will ever find out. Well, where shall I sleep?
Monroe was one of a kind, different from other starlets in Hollywood. She found the spotlight and basked in its glory. But there was a dark side, an inner sadness that she hid from her fans.
She used to tell me stories about how tough it was living in foster homes and never having a family of her own, you know, her mother being in a mental institution.
Desired by millions, her long list of lovers includes a Hall of Fame baseball player, a famous playwright, and a U.S. president.
She used to talk about JFK a lot. Marilyn was in love with JFK, yeah. She used to moan a little bit about their sex life, but there was no foreplay, she said. But I said to her, I said, Marilyn, the guy's running the country. He hasn't got time for foreplay. And she laughed about it. She thought that was funny, yeah.
A one-time, sadly underprivileged little girl. Her gifts inspired Queen Elizabeth to single her out for a woman-to-woman chat.
Even though she was the embodiment of romance and sensuality, all her marriages failed, and she never found real love.
She wanted a solid family life, and she wanted children, but she also wanted a career, too. That's why she broke up with Joe DiMaggio. Joe wanted her to, you know, become a typical Italian wife, cook the spaghetti and have 6 or 7 kids. And she would have liked that, but at the same time, she wanted to be a movie star. That was her dream. She had several miscarriages, and I'm sure she had a few abortions over the years, too. I think it devastated her.
As hard as she tried, she was never able to realize her dream of having a family. Marilyn lived in this ordinary-looking house on 5th Helena Drive in Brentwood.
What struck me then and stays in my mind now is really how modest it was for a movie star of her stature. Marilyn's was a house that somebody would live in. It was the house of a woman who was making a home for herself at last.
Mr. Esmond and I are going to be married.
To each other? Of course to each other. Who else to?
By 1961, Marilyn was struggling with all aspects of her life. She had just divorced her 3rd husband, playwright Arthur Miller, and earned a notorious reputation for not showing up for work on time, as she relied more and more on alcohol and prescription drugs.
I was with her 5 days before she died, and she still was very insecure about a lot of things. We were still drinking that Dom Perignon champagne, and she was knocking it off, and then occasionally take a straight vodka and then pop a pill. And I said to her, I said, Marilyn, I said, the combination of those pills and alcohol kill you. She says, well, it hadn't killed me yet.
On the 4th of August 1962, Marilyn asked a doctor to prescribe a bottle of 50 Nembutal sleeping pills. When her body was found, 45 of the pills were gone. On the 5th of August at 3 o'clock in the morning, a police radio broadcast said a homicide investigation was underway at 12305 5th Helena Drive. James Bacon knew all too well where that was.
I went in and I saw Marilyn lying on the bed. She was nude. I took a quick look and left. One of the saddest moments was when the coroners brought her out. They put a very cheap cotton blanket over her. God almighty. You know, reporters are companions of disaster, so we're very calloused. But I tell you, I had to brush away a tear when I saw that. What an inglorious end to a glamorous movie star. That was a very, very sad occasion. It really was, yeah. Death of an icon.
Almost immediately, there were unanswered questions about how she died, who she called, missing pieces of evidence, and rumors about murderous conspiracies. The murder theories have implicated everyone from hired killers to organized crime to the very top of the U.S. government.
If Jack Kennedy killed every woman, every actress he slept with in Hollywood, you wouldn't be able to cast a picture today.
There are still so many mysterious aspects to her death, and I think people are drawn to that and fascinated by that.
Former LA County Coroner Dr. Thomas Noguchi, who performed the post-mortem on her, maintained there was no doubt in his mind what had actually killed Marilyn Monroe.
Autopsy was performed in 1962, and at that time I have observed no evidence of an injury. Cause of death to be acute barbiturate intoxication, manner of death to be probable suicide.
The funeral service brought little closure to her fans. Hollywood doesn't surrender its legends easily.
I wasn't ready to let her go. And I think that's what a lot of us were. We weren't ready to let her go, and we still aren't.
Hefner credits Monroe with his success and feels such a close connection to her that he plans to be buried next to her.
Marilyn Monroe and I were both born in the same year, 1926, just a few months apart. So that common connection and the fact that she would wind up being our very first Playmate of the Month seemed almost like fate. Just seemed like a kind of natural thing for me.
In Hollywood, legends don't really die. Everything about them, every newly discovered photograph, everything they'd ever touched becomes valuable, collectible.
I have 5 of her gowns. I've been very, very lucky to acquire some of those. And this particular dress is made of silver lame. It's pleated. It was made for the movie Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
Greg Schreiner has been the president of Marilyn Remembered for 18 years and is one of the most tenacious Marilyn memorabilia collectors in the world.
This is her living room couch, which regrettably she never got to sit in. It arrived 2 days before she died, and when she died, they found it still crated in her living room. This is one of my very special things. It's a check that she signed the day of her death, dated August 4th, 1962. It's possibly the last thing she ever signed. We don't know for sure, but it is dated the day of her death.
Schreiner's collection includes everything from original wardrobe sketches for her movies to an inexpensive French perfume with her image on the bottle. He says the only thing that holds him back is money.
What would I get? Well, my first thought was, well, I'd either want the President Kennedy birthday dress, which is $1.4 million, or I'd want the 7-Year-Itch dress, the white dress. But the more I thought about it, I thought if I really had one thing of hers, you know what it would be? It would be a memory of having met her. I think that would be worth more to me than anything that I could buy physically with money.
There's still a magic with the camera. It's very hard to take your eyes off Marilyn.
There have been hundreds of publications devoted to keeping Monroe's memory alive. Marilyn Remembered is a worldwide fan club based in Hollywood that has used the private collections of its members to commemorate the 75th anniversary of Monroe's birth.
What it is rare photographs from our collections that have never been seen before. Just a wide range of photographs from various photographers spanning from Marilyn's childhood right through to the final film that she died in the middle of filming. Here's one of the rare photographs that we selected for the book. It's actually Marilyn in a studio publicity session. And one of the reasons it's notable is that it actually shows Marilyn's exposed derriere. Back when they shot this, the studio actually masked out her rear end with the white feathers. So this is the unretouched version of the photo. Unfortunately, typical of the way that history is rewritten in Hollywood, the current estate has essentially censored all photographs of Marilyn in which she's wearing furs and feathers of any kind. So we're no longer allowed to have any kind of merchandising that has images of Marilyn wearing fur, which is very hard to do because Marilyn wore fur just about any time she went out of the house. So as an example, the calendar company that tried to use this image on the calendar found that they had to remove the feathers digitally and essentially create a computerized white sheet to cover Marilyn's body.
I'll be any way you want me to be.
Why? Why is it so important?
Because I belong with you.
Because the screen has never shown this kind of woman before. The kind that reaches out in the loneliness of the night to a stranger passing by. I should have seen the warning of danger in her eyes.
Quite a gal. Bigger now than she was when she was living.
Marilyn had been born here, the town that can make and break the brightest of stars. And she'll remain here, along with her legend.